On the morning of June 30th, 1908, something extraordinary happened deep in the wilderness of Siberia, Russia. A massive explosion lit up the sky and shook the earth near the Podkamenaya Tunguska River. The blast was so powerful that it flattened about 80 million trees over an area of more than 2,000 square kilometers, an area larger than many major cities. The explosion was heard hundreds of kilometers away, and people were thrown off their feet by the shockwave. Yet, when scientists finally reached the site years later, they found something very strange. There was no crater. The Tunguska Explosion remains one of the most mysterious natural events in modern history. Scientists have studied it for more than a century, trying to understand what exactly happened that morning. Most now believe it was caused by a space object, such as a meteor or a small comet, that entered Earth's atmosphere and exploded in the air before hitting the ground. But even today, questions remain about the details of the event. It was a quiet summer morning in Siberia. Around 7:15 a.m. local time, people living in small villages and camps near the Tunguska River saw a bright fireball moving quickly across the sky. Many said it looked like the sun itself was flying through the air. Moments later, the sky flashed with an intense blue-white light, and a huge explosion followed. Eyewitnesses described the ground shaking and a strong, hot wind that knocked down houses and trees. Some people were thrown into the air, and windows shattered hundreds of kilometers away. The sound of the explosion was heard over a distance of 1,000 kilometers, and the shock wave traveled around the world twice. The explosion created a heat wave and pressure wave so strong that it burned the forest and flattened trees in a circular pattern, all pointing away from the center of the blast. However, no one was known to be killed directly because the area was very remote and sparsely populated. Although the region was far from major cities, a few people saw what happened from a distance. One of the best-known witnesses was a man named Semen Semenov, who lived about 60 kilometers from the explosion. He said he saw a bright light moving across the sky, followed by a loud bang. The shock wave knocked him off his chair and broke windows in his house. He described the heat as being so strong that it felt like his clothes might catch fire. Other witnesses reported similar experiences. Some thought the world was ending, while others believed a god or spirit had caused the explosion. In the nearby Evenki, Tungus communities, people said a great fire god had come down from the sky. After the explosion, the area remained a mystery for many years. Russia was going through political and social changes at the time, and Siberia was extremely difficult to reach. For nearly 20 years, no scientific team visited the site. Hunters and local people who went there said they found millions of fallen trees, all lying flat in the same direction, like blades of grass pushed down by a giant hand. When scientists finally reached the site in 1927, they were amazed. They expected to find a large crater, like the one created by a meteorite hitting the Earth. Instead, there was none. The trees at the very center of the area were burned but still standing upright, while the trees further out were blown down flat in a butterfly-shaped pattern. It looked as though a massive explosion had happened in the air, not on the ground. The first expedition to study the site was led by a Russian scientist named Leonid Kulik in 1927. He had heard stories from local people about a fireball and decided to find out what had happened. Kulik believed that a meteorite had crashed in the area and that he might find pieces of it or even a crater. When he saw the flattened forest, he was sure that a huge space rock must have hit the Earth. But after searching the area carefully, he found no meteorite fragments and no crater. This confused him greatly. He concluded that the explosion must have happened before the object hit the ground, that it exploded in midair due to extreme heat and pressure. Kulik led several more expeditions in the 1920s and 1930s, trying to find evidence of the meteorite. His team collected samples of soil and trees, and they measured the size of the affected area. Despite their efforts, they never found a single piece of a large meteorite. The biggest mystery of the Tunguska explosion was the missing crater. Every known meteor impact in history had left a large hole in the ground. Why was there none in Tunguska? Scientists began to think that the object had exploded high above the ground, between 5 and 10 kilometers in the air. When a meteor enters the atmosphere at high speed, often tens of thousands of kilometers per hour, it experiences huge pressure and friction. This causes the meteor to heat up and sometimes break apart before it reaches the ground. If the object is made of rock or ice instead of metal, it can disintegrate completely in the air. This kind of explosion is called an airburst. It can release as much energy as a large bomb, even without leaving a crater. The Tunguska explosion was estimated to release the same amount of energy as 10-15 megatons of TNT, which is about 1,000 times stronger than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima in 1945. Over time, scientists proposed several theories to explain the Tunguska event. This is the most widely accepted explanation. According to this theory, a stony meteor or small asteroid entered Earth's atmosphere and exploded at an altitude of around 8 kilometers. The heat and shock wave caused the massive destruction on the ground. Some scientists think the object was a comet, which is made mostly of ice and dust. A comet would vaporize quickly upon entering the atmosphere, explaining why there was no crater or large pieces of debris left behind. A few people suggested that the explosion might have been caused by natural gas or volcanic activity beneath the Earth's surface, but no evidence was ever found to support this. In popular culture, some people have claimed that the explosion was caused by a crashing alien spacecraft or some other unknown technology. However, there is no scientific evidence to support this idea. It remains a part of science fiction and conspiracy stories. In the mid-20th century, a few scientists suggested more exotic possibilities, such as a small black hole or a piece of antimatter hitting the Earth. These ideas are now considered very unlikely because they don't fit the physical evidence found at the site. In recent decades, scientists have used modern technology to study the Tunguska area more closely. Satellite images, computer models, and advanced simulations have helped researchers understand what likely happened. In the 1990s and 2000s, scientists simulated how different kinds of space objects might behave when entering Earth's atmosphere. The results showed that a rocky asteroid about 50 to 60 meters wide could easily cause an explosion like Tunguska's if it exploded in the air. Some researchers also found small amounts of microscopic silicate and metallic particles in the soil and tree resin from the area. These are believed to be tiny remains of the space rock that exploded. The Tunguska explosion is not the only airburst event that has happened on Earth. In 2013, a smaller but similar event took place over Chelyabinsk, Russia. A meteor about 20 meters wide entered the atmosphere and exploded about 30 kilometers above the ground. The explosion injured more than 1,000 people, mostly from broken glass, and caused damage to thousands of buildings. The Chelyabinsk event provided direct evidence that large airbursts are possible and helped confirm that the Tunguska explosion was likely caused by the same process, but on a much larger scale. Although the Tunguska explosion happened in a remote area, its effects were noticed around the world. In the days and nights following the event, strange glowing skies were reported across Europe and Asia. People in London, for example, said they could read newspapers at midnight without using lamps. Scientists believe this was caused by tiny particles thrown high into the atmosphere by the explosion, which reflected sunlight long after sunset. Similar effects have been seen after large volcanic eruptions. The explosion also released enough energy to register on seismographs around the world. Atmospheric pressure waves from the blast were detected as far away as Britain and the United States. The Tunguska event reminds us that Earth is constantly traveling through space, and sometimes it encounters small pieces of rock or ice that can cause great destruction. If the Tunguska explosion had happened over a city, it would have destroyed everything for many kilometers around and killed hundreds of thousands of people. Today, scientists and governments track near-Earth objects, NEOs, asteroids and comets that come close to our planet to prevent such disasters. The Tunguska explosion has played a big role in raising awareness about the importance of monitoring space for potential threats. It also serves as a natural laboratory for studying how the atmosphere interacts with meteors and how powerful explosions affect the environment. The Tunguska explosion of 1908 remains one of the most dramatic natural events ever recorded. It was a powerful reminder of the forces that exist in space and how vulnerable our planet can be. While the exact details are still not completely certain, most scientists agree that a small asteroid or comet entered Earth's atmosphere and exploded in mid-air, releasing a huge amount of energy. Even after more than a century, the Tunguska mystery continues to fascinate people around the world. It combines elements of science, mystery, and wonder. A story about how a single event in a remote forest in Siberia could literally shake the world.